WYFF. Come in, come in.
Remember that every single man, woman, and child in the state of South Carolina awakens to a freer, safer world because of George Bush.
WIS, do you hear us in Washington?
I would remind people that every single morning we all awaken to a safer, freer world because of George Bush.
WCBD, do you hear us in Washington?
And Nicole, I would remind you and the people of Florence that all of us awaken every single day to a freer, safer world because of George Bush.
WCSC, do you read us in Washington?
They themselves awaken every single day to a freer, safer world because of George Bush.
Campaigning via the satellite tour allowed the candidates to cover long distances. But there was another major benefit. They could bypass the national TV networks. There was no need to feed through the TV network center and on to the local stations. The campaign was now the center and its own television network.
This is great. I love these. Can we do any more? Can we do some now? We do those two now. I'm going to do some more in Florida and Texas. Have we done all of Colorado today?
Yeah, we've got one more done.
Today.
Another way the candidates made news was by creating their own TV news stories called the Video News Release. The Video News Release was given free of charge to local TV stations. Sent via satellite by the candidate, the Video News Release consisted of a campaign-produced TV news segment, complete with intro text for the local TV anchor to read, and a news story edited by the campaign.
I feel I have the experience and leadership to take America in new directions.
One new direction, Job Training 2000. Mr. Bush's plan to retrain blue-collar workers and the unemployed for new job opportunities. The country's 11 largest business organizations endorsed.
Nearly all the major candidates placed a video news release on local television, and nearly half the local TV stations which aired the releases didn't report that they had been produced by the candidate. For instance, this story's reporter, Michael Caputo, wouldn't be identified as working for the Bush campaign.
Primaries March 17th. In Washington, this is Michael Caputo reporting.
The campaigns had to pay out of their own pockets to produce the satellite media tours and video news releases. But their best and cheapest way of making news was through the TV talk shows. And the candidate's talk show of choice was CNN's Larry King Live, which made the front page of the New York Times 57 times during the election year.
Before Al Gore was famous, Tammy, on his book tour, he drove over to Mutual Network all by himself, came up in that great Crystal City elevator.
I still remember the day I became famous.
Yeah.
When your column in USA Today came out.
On that thing, that book. I always remember the card you sent me.
For the networks, making news meant making profits, as the candidates made nearly 100 talk show appearances.
Tell Bill if he'd do that thing in New York, it would be terrific. He's so good at this. Clinton.
Yeah.
One of the problems with staying on the bus too long is the two of you guys are so good on media.
Towards the end of the election, candidate appearances increased TV talk show ratings an average of 40%.
You know what you ought to do? You ought to come out on the bus trip with us one day. We could do a joint interview from the bus.
Larry King said the campaign ratings bonanza turned the election into a TV miniseries like Roots or The Thornbirds.
We're out of time. You can invite us on the bus.
Okay.
We have plumb run out of time. Thanks for coming, Al.
I'd like to invite you to come on the bus with us.
1992 was probably an historic first, as a major network's advertising revenues from its political coverage made more money than it cost to report the campaign. For CNN, the election was a watershed, as the network received its highest ratings since the Gulf War.
But I want him to finish the thought here. That's the one break we have to hit live. and around the world, but it's hard to believe we're being watched in 151 countries. It's scary. I'm in Israel. I'm at the Wailing Wall. True story. Israel. Never been there before. There with my brother. I'm Jewish. It's my culture. Stand there as an old rabbi, davening. He's praying. He's old, a religious Jewish man. He looks up at me and he says, "What's with Perot?" I swear to God, what's with Perot? In Israel.
I love it.
It's crazy. Ted Turner changed the world. I'm a big fan of yours.
Is it?
He would serve you after. You know what I mean? I'm really surprised. He's ready. What's he got left in the game? After you're elected, think about it. No dope.
That's for sure.
Great guy to work for, too.
So to speak.
You see? Fall.
So to speak.
Get on.
You see? Fall.
So to speak.
Amid continuing allegations of tabloid reports pointing to extramarital affairs, Arkansas Governor Bill Clinton is this noon campaigning across the South.
Hello, Mike. Everybody in America who's had problems in their marriage, who either wound up divorced or who got back together, votes for me. I'm a shoo-in. Can you hear me? I figure if everybody in Maryland who's ever had trouble in their marriage and they're still together, or who's ever been divorced, votes for me, I'm a shoo-in. Hello? And you know, if every American couple who's either been divorced or had problems and stayed married votes for me, I'm a shoo-in for re-election. I think the American people are smarter than the pundits.
Before Clinton was shooed into office, he had to compete against a host of other Democratic candidates. The media focused on 4 of these candidates, but Larry Agron was a 5th candidate the press did not report on.
There's no makeup here?
During the 1992 U.S. Conference of Mayors, the New York Times reported that, quote, dozens of mayors seem to agree on one thing. The single candidate who truly understands urban needs is Larry Agron, unquote.
They promised to bring this stuff over.
None of the networks mentioned Agron's presence at the convention.
How about if I run over that Super Saver?
One of Agron's staff had to run over to the Super Saver and buy some makeup because the network had broken its promise to provide it. This was typical of the media's treatment of Agron. When he appeared at this Democratic candidates forum, this Associated Press photo simply cropped Agron out of the frame. During the New Hampshire primary, the TV news reported the polling numbers of the top 5 Democratic candidates: Brown, Clinton, Harkin, Kerry, and Tsongas. When Agron moved into a 3-way tie with Harkin and Brown with 2% of the vote, most of the TV news didn't mention Agron. The day Bill Clinton captured what may have been the most valuable airtime of the entire election, as he spoke to 50 million viewers about his alleged affair, was the same day that a poll showed Agron's support at 4%. He had passed Brown and was the 5th leading candidate. When ABC's Sunday Evening News reported this poll, they simply deleted Agron entirely by not reporting his candidacy. During the New Hampshire primary, Agron's only live commercial TV appearance was through this satellite feed to ABC's Nightline. But the Nightline program wasn't directly about the election. When Agron complained to news executives about his lack of coverage, he was told he had not earned the right to media exposure because he had not received enough media exposure.
And on stage, the 5 major contenders for the Democratic presidential nomination.
Although Agron was on the ballot in nearly half the country, he was barred from most televised debates, including this one sponsored by the League of Women Voters. He couldn't meet one of the League's main criteria, which was, quote,